No pressure, Veronica. Okay. Once again, thank you all for your patience. What is the status of your presentation?
Mayor, that includes like make a closing statement obviously but prior to that, right. I would also ask for consider continuing rest. I have been approached by a number of residents for whom our project network that have been here since the first, some of them who have had subsequent details that have signed up that less your spouse other,
Right.
other needs. And some of those members have asked for and we those and I'll say that.
Okay. I hear you. Let's see. What is the consensus of the board? What do y'all want to do? Keep on? All right. Let's. All right. What I hear the board saying is we need to move on for a while. Okay. So councils have no further presentation at this time, correct? Other than rebuttal, other than closing.
Mr. Chairman, I may or may not call a rebuttal witness. I think it'd just be best if there's others that are going to testify that are not being presented by either the applicant or opponent, to let them go ahead in case something's said in there that justifies a rebuttal.
I would suggest that if there is a group that is concerned, perhaps they could choose a representative witness rather than repetitive evidence. But so let's take a shot at it. I'm going to go down the list as in the order that it's printed. Richard Crookshank.
Yeah, these
Think
may be
he's gone?
witnesses waiting outside.
The ones that were picked were already in this room.
Okay. Robert Cole.
I'm here.
Okay. You would state your name and address, please, sir.
Robert Cole, 31 Green Level Drive in Angier. And I'd like to give you copies of my testimony as well as the evidence that I needed that referenced in my testimony.
Okay, and you understand that we can deal with the factual information that you present.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Who else?
We did.
Just to clarify, this is a statement that is your statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That is my full-length presentation. I've summarized this in trying to keep with a 3-minute rule on this.
Okay.
You have a copy for the attorneys?
No, I don't. I wasn't represented.
I can make this one available for y'all to take a look at.
As far as my qualification, I'm a former Army officer. I'm qualified in safety and OSHA safety. In the military, I was CP12 certificate program qualified as a safety representative. I'm also OSHA 500 trainer, qualified to teach both OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 classes. My wife and I moved to Harnett County in about 2005. The natural beauty of this county, the recreational opportunities many of us enjoy here on the Cape Fear River, the imagination of the creative people who handcraft the Harnett County Barn Quilt Trail, the proximity to the mountains to the west and the seashore to the east, and the country-like setting of much of this area are certainly treasures to be cherished. They're the reasons that we are grateful for living here. Although my wife and I were not born or raised here, while we were on active duty in the military stationed at Fort Bragg, together we picked Harnett County and the town of Angier as our place to live, not only as our home while serving in the Army for both of us, but also as our planned place of retirement following our military service. And we both have a combined 6-year history of wearing that uniform. One of the things my wife and I worry about the most about having an asphalt plant in our neighborhood is our own past exposure to both airborne chemicals and carcinogens while serving overseas in combat zones. My wife has faced the high exposure to toxic chemicals and industrial gases at the Shuaibah industrial area in Kuwait City during her deployment in 2003. Because of these exposures, my wife cannot tolerate any further exposure to any sulfates, either through ingestion, inhalation, or as contained in any medical prescription compound without her getting extremely sick. I myself was exposed to the heavy smoke and the toxic plume clouds from the burning petroleum and the oil well fires in Kuwait during the Gulf War while I was deployed to Saudi Arabia in 1991. And these exposures now cause me frequent bronchial distress and other respiratory problems. Our big fear is that our past exposure to toxic chemicals will be worsened by further exposure to pollutants being discharged from an asphalt plant located only about a mile from where we live. As a former Army safety officer and as being well-versed in OSHA health and safety guidelines, OSHA states that bitumen, the black viscous mixture of hydrocarbons that is the bonding agent in asphalt, generates toxic fumes. The guidelines state that people are exposed to asphalt fumes are at higher risk of developing headaches, rashes, cough, and possibly cancer. In the source that I cite and use in my full presentation as I've given you, OSHA has found that, in quotes, asphalt fume exposure meets several of the criteria for designation as an OSHA priority. In particular, the known and potential health effects are serious, and there's considerable experimental evidence of cancer risk. There's also evidence of acute health effects among workers exposed to asphalt fumes, and that's end quotation. Therefore, I vehemently urge the board to reject the change in rezoning the Honeycutt property and thereby not approve the special use permit application. That they prohibit that land or any other property near Angier from being used as an asphalt plant, and encourage the board to listen to both the knowledgeable testimony that you've already heard of witnesses who have taken the time to research this issue and the testimony of impassioned residents who just want to live and raise their families in an environmentally safe community. So in closing, as an Army NCO first, and then as an officer, I not only took the oath of office, swearing allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, but also pledged a mission-first ethos and showing loyalty to the soldiers under my authority. And as board members, all of you, you too have taken a similar oath to the Constitution. And in your vision statement that you have online, you say that you're accountable to the citizens of Angier through your actions, duties, and your obligations in improving the quality of life in our community. So I'm calling on all of you to be faithful to that vision statement. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Okay.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Or Okay.
Mr. Cole, in this report that you have submitted to the board, you have provided citations to a variety of different organizations. Is that correct?
A couple of them, yes.
Yeah, so the statements that you have made in here regarding factual statements are not facts that you have developed independently on your own. You're relying on these sources that you researched?
Yes, and other professional documentation, OSHA guidelines, EPA regulations, yes.
As cited in your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That'd be appropriate.
All right, moving
Hang on,
on.
there may be questions from the other council.
Do you have any questions, Bowens?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to skim through, read through his.
We didn't have an extra copy of that exhibit, so he's just now
I
looking
see.
at it, so I think it'd
Okay.
be appropriate to give him just a minute to review.
All right, thank you, sir.
I just have a couple of questions, if you will. You say in your testimony that you are OSHA certified,
Yes.
and so as a part of your OSHA certification, is it a part of the regular course of business for you to utilize information from OSHA relating to, for example, in this case, exposures to asphalt fumes?
That is not my main priority, but I do have access to that information through the OSHA guidelines, yes.
Okay, so you have access through it, and do you regularly, as being OSHA certified, do you regularly rely on the research that is provided by OSHA?
Yes, in order to conduct the OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 classes, I have to go back, determining what subject that I'm teaching those classes. I have to go back then and study and make sure that I'm caught up to date on the latest regulations and the guidelines for teaching that to other students.
And so with respect to the information that you provided in this article, or in your presentation, as it relates to asphalt fumes and the like, and exposures thereto, you utilize information you received from OSHA, is that correct?
Directly, yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cole, one more question.
Mr. Cole,
Yes, sir.
just to clarify something, you state that you're a OSHA 500. Okay. For the record, so you don't get yourself in trouble when down the road or whatever, and he made the statement 2 or 3 times about being certified.
Yes.
OSHA don't certify nobody, you know that.
No, through-
We're all authorized.
Right. Through the local OSHA training
There's no
center.
certification when OSHA 500 is authorized, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next person on the list is Jason Wunsch. Is Jason an attorney? Are you here?
I happen to know that Mr. Wunsch left
Okay,
because of the time.
okay. Betty Harmon. I take it everybody is in here now? Is that correct? Betty, I'm gonna murder this. Kojakar? Come up and tell us what it really is supposed to sound like. Pick up the microphone. Tell us where you
It's
where you
actually
live.
Barbara Kojakar.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you got it
I'm
right.
sorry. Barbara, that's
As
correct.
they say, it's not from Johnston County. So my address is 1465 Wheeler Drive,
Okay.
in Angier. I do live in Neels Creek Farms. I'm not an expert on anything. I just wanted to let you know that I do believe that this asphalt plant, although it probably has a place somewhere, but just not where it's being planned. It is definitely going to impact the character of that area, which is one of the areas of which, you know, we're looking to consider. It is a residential area. There's schools. There's small businesses that are there, but just not the heavy industry that we're all concerned about. So again, I'm happy to have industry in the area, but not right next to homes, as close as they are. And of course, the health concerns that everyone has, that's already impacting people's quality of life, you know, just thinking about it. You've got somebody who's already withdrawn from a home sale. So it's already impacting our community. And I would hope that the board would consider making an attempt to have it relocated to a different area. So thank you.
Any questions of this witness? All right, the next listing is Karen Cooper. She's still here. Trent Elmore. State your name and address, please, sir.
Yes, Trent Kevin Elmore. I'm at 35 Pinecrest Way in Angier, North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening and thank you for listening to us tonight. As a concerned citizen of Angier, here are some of the facts as they pertain to granting a special use permit for the asphalt plant. Fact, and this is from the EPA online, I'll go ahead and say that, asphalt plants do emit hazardous air pollutants such as, and I'll probably slaughter these names because I'm not a chemical engineer, but acetaldehyde, benzene, ethylbenzene, formaldehyde, quinone, toluene, and xylene. While it is argued on both sides what amounts can be harmful, the fact is these harmful chemicals are emitted into the air by asphalt plant. That's a fact. I don't think that's argued on either side. There's no way to tell how these volatile chemicals will impact the health of humans, animals, and farms in Angier's specific topography in our area. A fact, and this is from the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, home values in other parts of North Carolina have dropped up to 56% with the building of asphalt plants. And another fact, although I'm not here in an official capacity for Campbell University, which I have to say by policy, I am the Human Resources Director for Campbell. I'm asked frequently by new faculty and staff, what are the nicer areas to live in? If this asphalt plant is built, I will no longer be able to state that Angier is a nice, quiet, residential-friendly community, nor could I recommend it. Taking into account the many facts that you are hearing tonight, I respectfully request that the board follow the stated guidelines for issuing a special use permit and not grant such a permit for Highland Paving Company. I have a little bit of time left, so I do want to state that my 8-year-old daughter said that she does not want the plant. She doesn't want to harm her dogs by it having possibility of harming your dogs
Okay.
here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? We need to make sure there's cross-examination by anybody.
Okay. Chantel Green.
Thank you. I didn't prepare a statement, and as it's well past my bedtime at this point, I might not be articulate, so I apologize.
Understand.
Excuse me one second, Bob, the remote won't reach, since you've moved the angle of the timer now, it's not picking up a signal.
I was just trying to see if it expired.
Oh, I got you.
Okay, start over and go ahead. name and
Chantel
address, please.
Green,
Yes.
142 Green Level Drive. I too am from Neels Creek Farms. I'm going to speak to the integrity and character of the community. I'm actually a new member of this community, having moved down here from the Washington, D.C. area where I worked for the House of Representatives for many years, over a decade. It was a purposeful move. I was fleeing the traffic in D.C. I was fleeing the congestion, and I was fleeing the frenetic nature of that area. And I was coming to a small community, the town of Crepe Myrtles. The Sunny Skies ice cream parlor. And when I drove into this town the first time, I was sold before I made it to my house. When I bought my house, I was amazed to find that it is a coveted neighborhood, that my neighbor across the street waited 8 years to get where I was just lucky to land. I love my community. I love my people around me. And I do think that having this plant move in is going to impact the character of this community, the small, wonderful, small town America community that I embraced and made my own, and that embraced me, thankfully. I know as elected officials that your job isn't always easy. Having worked with members of Congress for that long, I never coveted their role because it felt like they were all the times pulled in many directions over one issue, lots of voices saying different things. But I think your community is kind of behind you, and they're all speaking with one voice. And we're all kind of saying, I understand the value of what you're doing here, Mr. Businessman, and I'm not going to argue that this is unhealthy because I can't. I'm not an expert. You know that. What I'm going to say is it's not why I moved here. And if I had driven by that when I did my circle of the town and bought my house, if I had seen lots of big dump trucks driving on that road that I have to access every day to leave, I wouldn't have bought. And I wouldn't be happy if that's what I have to live with every day. So that's my statement.
All right.
So I hope I didn't bore you. Thank you for listening very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I appreciate it, and thank you for embracing me as a new town. Oh, I'm sure you guys don't have questions, but you don't want to make sure I'm not expert at anything.
Yeah, I think you said that already. Thank you.
Tony McDonough. All right, and then I've got one that I can't read the first initial. The first initial is B, and the last name is Hayes. Okay. Hillary Thomas. I don't think she's still here. Jim Nicholson. Jim Nicholson. No, I think he's gone. Jackie Jett.
Oh, thank you. My name is Jackie Jett, and this is my husband, Bruce.
Okay.
It needs to,
Jackie
it
and
need to,
Bruce,
you need to
okay.
turn it the other way. Wouldn't you know? Thank you for letting us come, and it's so late, and this is a hard decision for everybody. I know that you guys have seen this map, 100 times. I actually had not. I was able to go and talk to Sean Johnson, and so I'm just going to kind of, what I'm concerned about, obviously, well, a couple of things, but we've been in this community for 27 years, and when I look at you guys, you guys are all part of the community, and I know some of you, And when I look back here, you know, we know each other. We're like a family. And it's not that we don't want to see progress, because we've been here for 27 years and we've been wanting it so badly. And we are so excited about what the town of Angier is doing. You know, we're going to have that little Irish pub that's going to be coming in, and we've got that brick and mortar, you know, and there's so many positive, wonderful, wonderful things that are happening here in our community. And this doesn't fit. It's not that we respect the fact that it has to be in different areas because we have to have asphalt. But we've got 3 schools, and we have one road, 210. So here's Johnson property, because you guys know. And right up here is the plant. The school, North Harnett, is only, maybe a mile from there. And then we have the middle school. And then we have the high school on Harnett Central. I mean, these are our children. I mean, we raised our children here. I mean, I think you guys probably did too. I want to make sure that they're going to be, that these children that are coming up are going to be in a safe area. But what I'm concerned about is this 210, when you're coming down 210, you've got these big trucks that are going to be coming in. You've got the school buses that are coming in. You've got all of this development that in Lillington, I don't know how many homes are coming in down there. And then they're going to all come to this section here with the bypass. And if I understand correctly, no one's going to be able to take a left. We're all going to have to turn right, including the trucks that are coming in. And we're going to have to do a U-turn. And then either they're going to go straight down the bypass, 55 bypass, along with us, or we're going to come down here. That looks like a disaster to me. I'm not an expert on this at all. This is hard enough. But just, my time's up, so please think very carefully with your decision. And I know that you are, and I know that you are going to try to do the best for what is here in Angier. So thank you for taking your time.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa DeForge. Joe Langley, I think he just stepped out. Oh, no, there you are. Were you sworn, Joe? Were you? Okay, okay.
Okay.
Can you all see this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I use this. Thank you. Okay, my name's Joe Langley. I live at 298 Kirk Adams Road. I have property in downtown Angier located at 27 East Depot Street. And I'm here tonight to voice my opposition to the proposed paving company application. At this time, I'd like to present to the board compelling factual data that will prove that an asphalt plant in the proposed location will discharge toxic chemicals into the environment, thereby affecting the health, safety, and welfare of more than 5,000 citizens who currently reside within a 2-mile radius of the plant. Okay. In addition, more than 2,500 school children who attend schools located within a 2-mile radius of the plant would have the same risk exposure to toxic chemicals released by the asphalt plant. Okay. In the packet of information I've given you, you will find a report dated less than a year ago, May the 26th of 2020, titled Hot Blend Asphalt Plant in Berzit, a study to assess the environmental health impact. The study was conducted by Berzit University. It's a university in Palestine. One of the many conclusions in the study is as follows. Regardless of the current zoning of the area, setting up an asphalt plant in Berzit and this area poses a threat to the people and to the environment. According to international standards, the standards and references for the study are on the back of your handout. According to international standards, the safe distance varies according to the type of the industry. But the emitted chemicals and the speed and the extent of the air pollutants. But in general, it could range between 3 and 3.5 kilometers. Now, for those of us that don't know kilometers equates to 3.25. We'll split the difference between the 3 and the 3.5. 3.25 kilometers is 2.02 miles, okay? So let's review the map that you also have a copy of in your hand, and you'll note the 2-mile radius. And by the way, this map was not drawn by me personally. This was requested of Harnett County GIS, and they provided the data in this map. So here's the site. Sorry you folks can't see this. Here's the 2-mile radius. And you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner we have Angier Elementary School with 380 students. We have North Harnett Primary with 378. We have Harnett Central Middle School with 1,133. Harnett Central High School with 1,488 students. So the best part of this is this. This is a list for each of you of all of the people that, the property owners that reside in the 2-mile radius. I was really shocked to find out that there are 2,841 parcels in that 2-mile radius. If you take a very conservative 2-person per household times the 2,841, you have 5,600 people. If you add the numbers up for the schools, you have more than 2,500 students. And with that said, I would say it's crystal clear to me that you should not consider this. But there's one final item. We talked about the fact that there were toxic chemicals emitted. In your packet, you will look and you'll see that this is today's data from the North Carolina Division of Air Quality. And in that data, this is a list of the chemicals that are emitted by an asphalt plant, according to the North Carolina Division of Air Quality. I can't say that first one. I think it's acetaldehyde, acrolein, formaldehyde, phenol, styrene, trichlorofluoromethane, methylchloroform, methyl ketone, toluene, xylene, methylene chloride, soluble chromate compounds as chromium-6, N-hexane, manganese and compounds, mercury, nickel and compounds, tetrachlorobenzo-p-dioxin, arsenic and compounds, benzene, benzo-A-pyrene, hydrogen sulfide, beryllium, cadmium, hexachlorodibenzo-p-dioxin 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8, hydrogen chloride, which is hydrochloric acid, perchloroethylene, which is tetrachloroethylene, and also trichloroethylene. In conclusion, giving the overwhelming amount of factual data that I have presented, I would ask that you protect the health, safety, and welfare of more than 5,000 residents and 2,500 school children by denying the special use permit. And I'm sure there will be questions.
Questions from the board? Mr. Pope?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to ask any questions, but I just would, for the record, object to the inclusion of any reports prepared by third parties
So noted. Okay. And, ladies, I know your arms are getting tired.
I thought you were going to commend us for holding so still.
Mr. Chair, for the record, with respect to his presentation, I would say that, the board should take, quasi judicial notice of any learned, reports and or treatises, that the lay witness may have presented. And you are permitted to do so.
All right, Valerie Tart.
Oh, that's me.
Okay. And Jennifer DeShoff.
No.
Oh,
We might be saying good night, folks,
Ah.
instead of good evening.
I tell you,
I'm here as,
it's tomorrow.
My name is Valerie Tart. I live at 1292 Wheeler Drive. I've lived in, I'll tell you a little secret. My daughter is about to turn, my older daughter is about to turn 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I have been living in Angier before that. I lived down on Willow Street, and I lived at Curran's Crossroads, so I'm quite old as a resident goes. And I have to say that I did not know too much about this the hearing for the conditional use permit. But I'm the light relief. I'm going to tell you, you're being asked to put a square, something that's square in a round hole. You have some language that says the commerce part could contain heavy industrial, but it has yet to do that. I can go and look down the road and see with my two eyes there's no heavy industrial businesses on site today. You are making an application to come to Angier to do business, and it's up to the elected officials of Angier to decide what is in the best interest of applications that come before you that are going to be beneficial to the town. Your criteria could be tax revenue. It could be. And there is this dual responsibility of trying to meet the needs of the community and do a balancing act. And it's not an easy task. I have seen lots of other things in action, but there is you have to meet the best needs of the community, and you have to decide as town commissioners which way this town should be going. Should it be known? What would you like it to be known for? Would you like it to be considered well by the residents of the town? Or would you like to open the door, because you do not have a traditional industrial park. You are trying to do this square peg, round hole deal, and you have an opportunity to say, no, we would like to serve the best interests of as many residents as you can. And if you're looking at 401 and you're heading towards Lillington, there exists an asphalt plant, and by hearsay, I understand these people tried to purchase that business and were denied, so they're here wanting to operate on the other end of 210. I don't blame you. You've got business interests. But it's hard to accept that all the contracts that you will be awarded will be for the benefit of the town of Angier. Likely, you are going to be presented with business contracts that are going to take you beyond the boundaries of Angier. Yet Angier is going to have to house all of the component parts for the mixing and the air pollution. And I don't know, I wouldn't bore you with all the names of all of the different chemicals because I don't understand them. I'm not a chemical engineer.
Could you wrap up, please, ma'am?
Yes, so I am thanking the board for listening. I think the board has an opportunity to not open Pandora's box at this time. You should try to do, if you want an industrial park, gain the land and make it a true industrial park, because this will be number one with the different type of commerce in that park, and you should look to the best needs of the community and try to meet the needs. And you don't even have screening. All they're going to do is put up, or the requirement is to put up a screening. There's no trees, there's no, it's right on 210, which is highly traveled. And it's really for heavy equipment that's going to be doing turns, it is a terrible, terrible location. Thank you very much.
Right.
Hope
Thank
sleep
you,
well
Ms. Tart.
tonight.
Any questions of her, Mr. Pope, or, okay. Jennifer Dishoff. Terry Murphy.
Greetings, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Terry Murphy. I live at 228 Kenneth Creek Drive. My name will be on that list that was graciously handed out. I live at like 0.72 miles as the crow flies from where the plant will be, as proposed. I came prepared to speak on the health concerns by a Center for Health and Environment and Justice, and a lot of quotes from EPA, but that's been covered by experts, and I am not. I've been a resident for 29 years here, and raised my children here, and like my friends, the Jets, we've raised our children here. A lot of other neighbors here from Kenneth Creek and from Mills Creek, we've known each other for years and in this community and value a lot of the same things. One thing I would like to speak to that I have not heard, and we've been listening out there on our phones, and so the health concerns aside, which is our primary concern, is the thing about the property values. And I know that even if that this state-of-the-art facility is built with these new regulations and to monitor emissions and toxins and everything, and even if all of those things worked and if they never broke down, and if they're only, I think at one time said that on a minimum they would be inspected once a year on a minimum, even if it was inspected twice a year, but if these procedures or whatever for monitoring were to break down before it was found, how much time would that be? And these pollutants that could be in the air, even if all of that, but if all of that worked, the perception of the pollutants and what that's doing to our neighborhood and our community, to anyone that's trying to sell their property or all these new homes and these properties that are to be built around here. The perception of new buyers coming in and seeing this asphalt plant here. They're going to look up and they're going to see the same kind of things, asphalt plant pollution. They're going to see the same type of information that all of us have been researching and everything that says this is the air pollution that is caused. And might not know that this particular plant will have a state-of-the-art facility for monitoring these toxins. No, their perception is going to be this. And so our property values are going to plummet. And what that can be, who can measure that? There are statistics here saying a property value study said up to 56% of a decline. It could be 10%, it could be 20%. It's still a loss. And so I just beg you to consider what the perception will be. And the other thing, and I know my time is up, is that if this happens, if this plant goes through with this type of rezoning for this industrialization, then it's going to set a precedent for other industry with other types of higher industrialization to be coming into our community as well. And those of us that bought and have spent our lives out here are suddenly going to find ourselves in the middle of an industrialized area. So this is just going to set a precedent for more. And I know it's a hard decision, and I know that I don't envy what each of you are doing up here. I just pray for all of our sakes and for our community that the right decision is come to, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Any questions? Or? All right, Ricky Temple.
Right. That was just the handwritten ones.
What, oh yeah, what is?
Can you tell them, it looks like
Looks like the petition.
petition.
Yeah, this petitions, the signatures that weren't online.
Dan, give us guidance on that.
Yeah, I think that would be akin to a written statement that would probably be inadmissible under 160D.
It does have everyone's addresses on there also too.
So these are showing people who live within the area.
The document that was handed up shows, I think, the people that live in the area. This is a petition, as I understand it. Can I take a look?
This is hand done.
This was hand done door to door and in the parking lot.
Right.
Confirming that people live in the area. There's over 200 people.
Right. This to me is akin to a written statement because it's these people signing that this is their opinion. And I think under 160D, written statements are not admissible unless they're here to testify and be cross-examined. Well,
Some
with
of them
their,
are still there here.
well, if they would like to testify, they can certainly testify. And
When a number of them tried to sign up outside, they were told that they weren't allowed to cannot sign that, or if you wouldn't answer, can you please sign this, and we'll try to defend it on your behalf. I mean, we're trying everything.
I understand. We're just trying, there are certain rules that apply to quasi-judicial proceedings that we're making sure we comply with, which is, our statutory duties. And written statements by people who are not present to testify and be cross-examined are inadmissible under the current law 160D that we have to comply with.
Is there any chance you can, I know it's been brought up, but can we move for continuing so that these people have an opportunity to review here at a reasonable time to?
Any continuance is up to the board, but, it's,
We've turned down other letters of
yeah,
people
I
who were
think,
not here.
I understand your position, and I'm sorry, we do have the obligation to comply with the statutory process.
Yes, but the names here, it just begs to make us ask, are there any residents of the Angier area that are in favor of this, that are not benefiting financially?
What do you mean by not benefiting financially?
Pardon?
What do you mean?
That are not benefiting financially, meaning for the sale of the property.
Oh,
or,
okay.
Or,
Okay.
whatever, by their business, by
Okay.
business interest. Are there any
Let's
residents?
do this. We cannot take it into account in our decision, but let us acknowledge that there has been an extensive petition, and we appreciate the effort of those who brought it to us. How about that?
The horns honking throughout the evening. Our sign said, honk if you're against the asphalt plant.
Heard that,
People
yes.
that didn't show up even though they were driving through town on their way home from work to take care of their families, they were honking in support of this isn't the right place.
Understand. Okay. Thank you again, but we have to do this the right way. Okay. Russell Wall. I'm sorry, Ricky. Ricky, come back up. Yeah.
My name's Ricky Temple. I live at 111 Tasha Lane, Fuquay, Arena, but in Harnett County on Harnett Central Road. the good news is you ain't going to hear nothing else about environmental or bad or toxics and all that. And I'm a licensed general contractor, utility contractor, highway grading contractor, plumber. And y'all all know I've been here for 62 years in this community here.
Well, you don't look it, Ricky.
Well, I appreciate that. But we've had and I'm just, y'all ain't got to call me a professional, but I'm gonna state just facts, okay? And the fact is, we've had a terrible, terrible thing to happen here in our area in the last 3 or 4 months. And what that was is one of our asphalt plants in Garner got bought out by a big corporation, Fred Smith, okay? And they're going around, they're trying to buy all the asphalt companies. And yes, we got one down here at Lillington, but here's the problem that we have as small business owners here in this community that try to serve the people here in this community, is the one down here at Lillington don't want to sell asphalt to me. They just go out and they bid DOT jobs, and they don't care about the smaller contractors here in this area, the ones that build streets. Give you an example. Gelder probably paved, and I'm going to use a low number of 75% of the streets that these people live on in our area, okay? And Fred Smith bought them out, and when they bought them out, that's over with. That's the reason the man wants to come up here. He wants to pick up because Fred Smith bought that asphalt plant for one reason and one reason only. It's right beside 540 that they're gonna build, okay? And it's all ready. Now, when the town of Angier wants Ricky to come over here to do a patch, you know where I haul my asphalt from? Raleigh-Durham Airport. That's where I have to get it at. Raleigh-Durham Airport, that's the closest place. S.T. Wooten, they're busy on 95. They don't cater to it. Now, when I cross that river, I go to this man's place because he caters to me down there. I do a lot of work for Aqua, and I have to do a lot of patches, and he makes sure that I get asphalt when I need it, just like Gelder did up here. But don't have Gelder no more. Freddie Stansel don't have Gelder no more. None of the people around here that has been having all these streets paved around here don't have Gelder no more. Fred Smith don't care about them. So we are in a jam as small business people here in our community on getting asphalt to do what we need to do. I'm in a terrible bind. I'll go ahead and tell you. And this area needs this asphalt plant. Now, you can move that asphalt plant a mile that way, or a mile that way, or a mile that way, or even 4 or 5 miles that way. And you, only thing's gonna be any different, you're gonna have a different group of people. Because every 10 people that move in here from Cary or wherever they come from, there's one naysayer in every one of them. And that's what shows up. And as business people, now I'm not just speaking for Ricky Temple, now I'm speaking for a lot of business people that sent me over here to speak to let y'all know exactly what's going on. And let me tell you something else going on too, okay? Because here's something that ain't nobody realized. All the sand that goes in concrete comes out of Harnett County. And it is trucked up 210 and up to Raleigh to supply all the asphalt plants and all that. The tar that they talking about is trucked out of Harnett County right there in Dunn, North Carolina, all up there. And we're going up there and we're buying asphalt and paying taxes on it and can bring it down here and putting it down. That man's a tax collector for us, okay? We can keep that tax revenue on that in Harnett County. Because right now, Wake County's getting it. They don't send it down here, okay? What we're doing is we're trucking all our sand out of Harnett County up there, and then I'm sending my trucks up there and trucking it right back down here. We could be trucking it, we could be cutting out 40, 50 miles of the trucking, size them trucks running 60, and my truck's running 60 mile an hour up and down 210 out there, they're gonna be slowing down 25 or 30 and turning in, okay? And they're gonna be turning in and collecting tax money, and it's gonna benefit the community. And I understand, hey, everybody, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. And the honest way that they'd recognize it if they had to ride down dirt roads like we did when we were little boys, okay? We got to have, and if the asphalt plant was as bad as all these people made it out to be, there wouldn't be one in the United States. EPA wouldn't allow it. EPA needs to do their job. Our quality control needs to do their job. They are the ones that decide where it's safe and all that. Not, it's kind of like this. It's like this right here. Henry Ford built and designed the Ford motor, okay? Now, if you want to know how that motor was designed, you don't want to go to a body shop to find out, okay? Because that fella might be driving a Chevrolet and he's going to find everything in the world wrong he can with that Ford motor because he likes Chevrolet, okay? So you go to the manufacturer and pay attention to the manufacturer that is going to get sued if what they put on paper ain't right.
Right.
They spend millions and millions of dollars to make sure that their stuff is right, passes all the rules and regulations. Y'all know the scoop. I know my time's up.
Time's up, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right,
I think he may have a question.
Ricky?
Are you an expert on environmental concerns?
On asphalt, yes, I am. You want me to tell you how I am? Because I've been putting asphalt down for 42 years, okay? And I've been standing on top of that 300-degree stuff coming right up. I ain't dead. I ain't dead. I'm still living. Can't be too toxic, can it?
But that's your testimony.
That's my testimony.
That's the extent of your expert testimony.
You can't get nobody that 42 years of it, you ain't dead. It might not harm you.
And have you heard anyone here say that asphalt will kill you?
Well, toxic kills. Yeah, toxic kills. And I've heard toxic, seen signs of toxic. I've seen toxic everywhere.
All right. But
So
do you
yeah,
have,
toxic does kill. Do you realize that?
do you have any empirical evidence as it relates to what type of emissions will be coming from the plant that's proposed to be sited?
Do I have any?
Any evidence?
Yeah.
What
I
evidence?
got a whole folder full right there from EPA, environmental and all that. It says 2002 when the EPA said that asphalt plants are no longer on that list. I got all that.
But that's your,
I'll be
that's
glad
your,
to share it with you.
so that's your information?
Yeah, that's my information.
Okay.
That's who,
And
that's who the
your,
state has to go by. They have to go to the EPA and
and that's your
our
expert,
quality control.
that's your expert opinion?
That's my expert opinion.
And, so you are familiar with the type of emissions that come from asphalt plants? And that's based on your experience of picking up, loading asphalt and putting that asphalt down, is that correct?
That is, and that also is what could be coming from that asphalt.
But that's the basis of your opinion, is that correct?
That is the base of my opinion, that it can't be as bad as y'all may. I ain't saying that it's got a little bit of toxic coming out of it, but it's below the state levels. And if it was above the state levels, one fellow that I got with me been putting asphalt down for 50 years. He'd be dead and I would too. It ain't toxic.
And that's your scientific.
That's my sign. When you're still living, that's pretty scientific, okay?
All right.
That's my scientific testimony.
Okay.
If I am a professional, I can't give you my opinion, right?
Well, I understand your questioning, and certainly, Ricky, you hadn't been qualified as an expert, but we The board will take your testimony and weigh it to the extent it can. So, thank you.
Mr. Temple, I got a question for you, sir. So, listening to you, it sounds like your concern is Harnett County to make more taxes.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay. And less miles that your drivers are having to drive to acquire the asphalt.
That and how much, you know, because if it's as bad as they say it is, and they're trucking it with, in other words, it's 40 miles right down my airport. If you bring it down here in this part of the area, you're trucking it 40 miles, blowing it all over, you know, God's creation when you could be hauling it 2 or 3 miles.
Right.
I mean,
Do you have a letter or something from Johnson Brothers saying why they won't sell Ricky Temple asphalt?
here's the thing. When I need asphalt, I need asphalt.
Right.
Now, here's the way if Johnson Brothers is making the kind of asphalt I need today, and but they ain't making you nothing just because you need asphalt, okay? Barn Hill's the same way, Wooten's the same way. If they're making it, you can get it that day. If you'll, you know, but now just when we had Gelden put it in the silo for me, it'd be ready anytime I wanted it. This man right here, if I'm in Fayetteville and I call him and say, look, I'm got a water line break in the middle of the road and I need asphalt, 10 o'clock tonight. 10 o'clock tonight, he'll already have made that day, throw it in that silo for me, I can go get it, and I open the road back up, and everything's good.
Okay, thank you.
He's willing to cater to the small business people in Harnett County. And taking nothing away from Johnson Brothers now. Because Johnson Brothers is good. They'll give you asphalt if they're making it, but they ain't gonna run it for you just cause you need it.
So I just have 2 more questions. Okay. Number one, I believe your testimony was that you can get asphalt from Johnson Brothers. Is that correct? If they're made it.
If they're making it that day.
That day. Okay. So there is a source.
There is a limited source.
Okay. And then the second question is, one of the criteria that the Board of Adjustment has to consider with respect to granting the special use permit, whether or not taxes will be paid in Harnett County or some other county?
Well, yes, because when I go to Raleigh and buy it, they charge me taxes up there, it's Wake County taxes.
And so that is one of the criteria.
That is one of the criteria that if we're carrying the asphalt to the consumer, that the 70% sales tax has to be paid on. Now, if it's a capital project.
The question I'm asking, I want to be very clear, is whether or not the asphalt plant contributes to the tax base of Harnett County, irrespective of.
Many ways.
No, I'm asking you if that is a consideration that the board is supposed to take as it relates to the special use, the issuance of the special use.
They ain't got to take that into consideration. They got to go to the guidelines they got to go by.
Okay.
That's just my, hey, if I can get things lined up to where we can get more tax revenue
And do you know?
in Angier and Harnett County, then my taxes will stay low.
Now,
That's my personal.
do you know whether taxes from this particular plant that's proposed in the ETJ would would go directly to the town of Angier? Do you know that? Do you know whether that's the case?
I know it's gonna go to Harnett County now.
Do you know whether it goes to Angier?
I think I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that they all get a piece of the pie.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you, sir.
Just like everybody gets a piece of pie.
I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you. All right, Russell Wall. Okay, Caitlin Curran. Okay.
Well, before we hand that out to the board, whose notarized statement is this?
So this is applicant who lives next to the Boston paving plant and notarized the statement for me.
Is
Regarding her
Is she here tonight? Unfortunately, I don't think we can. accept that. I think that
But
we've
they were
we've
here.
had several written times where people have tried to introduce written statements by witnesses who were not here, and we've consistently not allowed that.
Kathleen's print from next to the Johnson paving plant, and there's also photos of asphalt residue particles from the gentleman who lives behind that asphalt plant.
If you have personal knowledge of the photos, I think that's fair game, but I think written statements by individuals who cannot testify and be cross-examined, I think we're not allowed to introduce those. What we can do is state their name and address for the record, but we cannot introduce the statement into evidence. The photos you can hand to the board.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Curran. I reside at 419 Kenneth Creek Drive in Angier. I live here with my fiance, Pavel, who is the homeowner, my 13-year-old daughter, and our 2 dogs. This home is located just 0.8 miles from the proposed asphalt site, and my daughter attends a school which uses the Crosswalk Church parking lot, only 0.3 miles from the proposed asphalt bus stop. My fiance, my daughter, and our 2 dogs, we enjoy walking frequently throughout our neighborhood, especially in the summer mornings and evenings. We also enjoyed attending the Myrtle Crepe Festival here in downtown Angier, and we absolutely love the fresh air, the open fields, and the country life feeling that Angier has to offer. We drove our realtor absolutely nuts during our home search because even though she found us some very beautiful options in Holly Springs, Cary, Apex, and Fuquay Varina, none of them could offer the spacious yard and the country living lifestyle that we were seeking that Angier has to offer. We were adamant about finding a home here, even though very few were available at the time. Since learning of the proposed asphalt plant, I have spent the time speaking with people who own homes and live near the Johnson Brothers Paving and Utility Plant in Lillington, just 5 miles from this proposed site, down 210. One resident, Kathleen, invited me into her home and spent a good hour telling me about how just upsetting it can be to live so close to an asphalt plant, especially during the hot, humid summer months. She has provided with me a statement regarding her experiment, which I'm submitting as evidence, which was turned down. I also have spoken with a gentleman who lives immediately next to the same asphalt plant, and he showed me the black asphalt marks covering the siding of his home, which I provided. He states they do not come off. I am also, so I provided you with those photos. He also stated that he does not hang his laundry out to dry anymore since the asphalt plant has been there because the laundry collects an odor, which is noxious, and particles of black sludge from the asphalt plant collect on his home in addition to the laundry. I mention all of these things because under section 15.3.2.3 regarding special use permits, it is stated that buildings and structures should be substantially uniform. This area consists of farmland, residential neighborhoods, and light commercial, quiet businesses. An asphalt plant just does not fit into this community. The code also states that the special use permit must not impair the integrity or character of the surrounding or adjoining districts. Angier is known as a town of myrtle crepes. It is quiet, peaceful country lifestyle that it offers. If you allow an asphalt plant on this site, it will be the first thing that you see getting off your new 55 bypass. And Angier will become known as a town of the asphalt plant. This is not the character of this town. Like Holly Springs is known for its smelly dump and its nuclear plant, Angier will become the next big joke known for ruining the town's character by putting up an asphalt plant in a small residential neighborhood where it just does not belong. The special use permit not only must not be detrimental to the health, moral, and welfare of the surrounding community. As I mentioned, I very much enjoy my quiet, pollution, toxic-free environment where I can peacefully enjoy my walks and events in here downtown Angier. An asphalt plant will have very negative impact on my activities and reasons for choosing to live here. It will cause odor, toxin, and potentially particles to enter my neighborhood and our surrounding communities, being very detrimental to my family and our enjoyment of our neighborhood and community. My daughter previously suffered from asthma, and since moving here, she has not required an inhaler or treatment for her asthma. I fear that the toxins from a proposed asphalt plant at this location would change all that and be detrimental to her health and well-being, especially seeing how not only our home but her bus stop are both very close to this proposed site. The buses traveling in the area for her school and other local schools, I'm also very concerned about the addition of heavy and slow-moving asphalt trucks that will be regularly moving throughout the area and the impact that this will have on our community. I have provided you with more than enough reasons to deny the special use permit. We are trusting you to do the right thing for our families of these communities, and please say no to the asphalt plant on this site in Angier. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions?
I'm not going to ask any questions. I'd just like for the record to object to all the out-of-court statements made by third parties that were contained in her testimony. And to the extent that she doesn't have personal knowledge and take these pictures herself, I would object to those as well with having no foundation.
Okay, the board is advised of that advice. Okay, oh, you did take the pictures?
That you handed up to the board,
I took them myself.
and you took them from an adjacent property owner?
This gentleman lives directly on the lot next to the asphalt plant in Lillington.
Speak up.
In Lillington, sorry. He lives directly next to the Johnson's Paving utility company.
Okay, and so you observed firsthand,
Oh, yeah.
what were referred to as the dark spots that were on the
Correct.
side of his home?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay, and when did you take those pictures?
2 or 3 days ago.
Within the last 3 days?
Yeah.
Okay. The pictures that you provided to the board, are they a fair representation of the concerns that you're raising in your testimony with respect to the emissions from the
Yeah.
from the plant?
Yeah, it leads me to believe that there's no way that an asphalt plant could be placed in a residential area and have it not immediately affect. I mean, if it's landing on the guy's house, where else is it landing? What are we breathing in? It's landing on cars. It's landing on clothes that are hanging out to dry.
And did you speak directly to the homeowner?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And he had let me know if they understood what was going on back 30 some odd years ago when they received the notification about like the zoning and stuff going on out there, that they would have fought it, but they just didn't understand what was going on until they woke up the next day to an asphalt plant and weren't too happy about it.
Okay.
That's what he said to me.
Where was this house compared to?
It was right next to it. It was directly next to the asphalt plant. Northeast, I guess. I mean, that's south, right? Like, Lillington is south, correct? So
Well,
his house was like immediately in front of it, so I guess
West.
that would be north. Sorry, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning now.
yeah.
Good morning.
Amen.
I'm so done. Sorry. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry. It was right next to it.
Yeah.
We good?
Okay. Thank you, Caitlin. Courtney Trujillo.
Hi, my name is Courtney Trujillo. I live at 151 Norris Farm Drive in the new Norris Farm neighborhood off of James Norris Drive. So we're maybe less than a mile if you go straight through the trees. I know tonight's meeting is all about facts. I'd like to touch on some facts that may have been left out of some of the paperwork that you have in front of you. Fact, the majority of the community that I've spoken with is against the site proposed for the plant. Fact, this majority has invested in the town of Angier by purchasing homes to raise our families and watch them grow. Fact, this majority has done its best to support local businesses, especially through this past year of unknowns. Fact, this majority is made up of business owners, farmers, and professionals who have carried this town through good times and bad. Fact, this majority invested in you to follow through with assurances that we were given to keep our town growing in the direction that would allow our families and businesses to flourish in the best way possible. Do not dismiss these facts because they are not something that you can put on a graph or calculate. These are facts you see when you walk around town and visit local businesses. These are facts you see when you gather with your neighbors. And these are facts you see when you attend football games and school functions. Sometimes facts you need to make the right decisions are in front of your faces. You just need to stop and look around.
Thank you, Courtney. Any questions?
Courtney,
Yes.
you listed a lot of facts about concerns that residents have raised. Would it be fair to say that those facts would it be fair to say that those facts lead you to believe that the proposed use at that particular location isn't in harmony with the community as you know it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Adams, Robbie.
I'm a longtime resident of Angier. I remember going to the corner grill over here when it was at the intersection and Ed's when it was over here, so I've been around a long time. Kind of excited to see where Angier's going, to be honest with you, until now. I live at 149 James North Road. My wife's in the back. You want to wave? My daughter. We have another little house, 161 James North Road. Got another little house at 110 James North Road. How did I get those houses? I don't have money. But I was a deputy. I didn't make any money. Very little money. I saved everything back. All the overtime Dad lives next door, Doc Adams. That's 20-some acre farm. I have an uncle lives in the house. I have son's got asked, mother's got asked, already. So, and then my life evolved. I live there. Guess what? Purchased my house, 4,000 feet tall. My church itself. Now we have 150 people who wanted me to represent tonight. Why? Because when I be there's a project doing the week tonight, it's going to disturb us. Not in talking about that. Now, like most of the people coming tonight, I'm not a got an undergrad in religion, liberty. Just finished seminary degree. I thought better off reading scripture. But I'm like a lot of my fellow neighbors, I call researchers. We got online, we got on Google, we started research. I wanted to know, I wanted to give a fair shot to guys that bring in a business, you know, but not take a dollar. But I'm reading, and I'm reading the same thing. I come to this one site, Blue Ridge Environmental Defense. I read past it. I read this. The Carolina Asphalt Paving Association claims that 10 residential wood stoves emit much highly, I'm saying this right, thick, dramatic hydrocarbon, benzene. Plainly, this assertion is not supported by data. In fact, average size asphalt plant emit 4 PA8 energy, easily transferred to the air. Comes from that petroleum. More than 300 wood stoves, more sulfur dioxide than 7,000 wood stoves, more calcium, cadmium, 63,000. Gave 3 Carolinas. I read this line. According to Dr. Dwayne Williams, North Carolina State Toxicology, 40% of the toxins from asphalt, plant smokestacks, even meet air quality standards. And for the other 60% of these emissions, these state stacks lack sufficient data to determine. Here's my point. I'm not a don't ask. I will say there's too much differentiation in that. Because all those houses, I played on that farm. I read a whole area. You have played in that pond. You know what else is there? Oh, water. Guess where that watershed goes? Travel that watershed across the goes to another watershed. Idea Run Farm. Nice little creek. You follow that creek, that's where it goes. You want to tell me fugitive emissions, runoffs, acts of God, not going to impact, not necessarily what's in that plant, but the acid rain, the other chemicals are not going to go to that watershed, through that creek, where, what is our watershed study? What? What is the watershed study? You just can't put a plant there and say there's not going to be any problem. Because as Mr. Monty said, any extra emission is more.
Thank you, Robbie. Any questions? Okay, one last one. Debbie Taylor? All right. That's the end of those who have signed up to give evidence. Debbie Taylor. I've gone through all the names on the list. Okay, called you earlier. Yes, you did not respond earlier. Come on forward and talk to us.
I've been a hermit for years. Just got a haircut here. I live 5.5 acres at that place called Neal's Creek Farm.
Yep.
And I'll tell you about 2 stories, but I guess they need to. But I am trying to be consistent. I did a summary of my testimony. But I'm not going to read from it. Well, no, I could have find it. I tried to be kind of sensitive, so you may hear a story and think you guys can drag on. Bruce Hyder, who's 16, he had to leave, and he granted me 3 minutes. So
You're just limited. You're just limited to a total of 3, please, sir.
I'm who am I? I'm Dr. Tommy McDonough, private clinical psychologist, 35 years. Leadership was 32 of those 35 years. The other 3 I was in clinical research. But I'm retired. I have no expertise on anything about asphalt, any of that. I love that. I have just one little asphalt story, which is I have a motto. I love asphalt. I hate potholes. My motto is I've never seen a pothole that doesn't need immediate asphalt. Asphalt plants need to be a support. we have a very strong the about how we need an asphalt area. That's fine. We need it like fine. That gets to your problem. I have a problem and you have a problem. I have a problem because I have two Curry streets. You were competing against Curry. I went to Curry and found a 2-story huge column. It was beautiful in life. Brought it home. I live at Neal's Creek Farm. My wife said, forget it. Why? But we're dying. That sounded pretty violent to me. I just stopped home thing. Neal's Creek Farm is the front gate, 0.9 mile proposed plan. Back gate, I live for back 2.0 front gate, 2.0 road miles. So we have a plan, our subdivision, Neal's Creek Farm, 150 home association estimates we have 3 to 450 people living. And then you have another subdivision that's being put in 1.0 miles. The plant has new subdivision. Neal's Creek Farm is farther out. Answers here. You have new subdivision here, which is 1.0 mile plant. Our subdivision is basically 1 mile. So we have a plant with 2 subdivisions. Our Neal's Creek Farm has been there more than 50 years. So it's not like this is new, you know, like plants there and we build it. We were there first 50 years. So your problem is, my problem is, I hope I keep having clean air until I die in my house. My wife has to go 75, like to keep living alive. Your problem is not just the vision for that. What is your vision for this community? One more story about Carrie. I mean, that's the business of the former mayor, my age. You know what? Hey, Carrie's been back number 5 in the best place to live. He's just being dear to you. He said, I used to be the mayor of Carrie. At those zoning meetings, we took that zoning stuff so serious. What do we have today? The top rank of the whole country. That just didn't happen by accident. There was wise people making wise decisions. That's what the community here is asking you to do. This is serious stuff. If you blow it, maybe I will be able to talk to my wife to go over here. They'll get all my money. I commuted 20 years every day, 2 hours, round trip. I did retired from one government position, went to another one. 20 years, I voluntarily. I didn't live in Fayetteville. We loved it. So why don't we keep up the good quality of life? The human will watch it disappear. Just gradually, getting back to my handout. The 2 positive things in the permit, the request for this, he said there's 2 things we can take. This is what they said. Your question asked, why should I, what will this do for the community? We'll create 15 to 30 jobs. So the basic decision from my point of view is, are we willing to absorb whatever level of toxic, whatever that lower level is, so they can drive their truck more efficiently, and we gain the stuff. I think the simple answer to this is, if they will, the applicant would reconsider, get community support. Figure out where you all want an industrial park, not just one industrial plant. Let's use that as a magnet to bring in 5 industrial. Let's have a huge industrial parks number, but not between 2 major subdivisions. Now that gets into what is your vision? It's beyond this one little decision here. This is, where do you want 10 factors in between the two subdivisions so that we can have what sounded like what I call a Maserati asphalt plant? Put it right up next to Neal Street Farm. We got a bunch in. I got 5 acres. Dude, if they give me $2 million, well, you can put it on, I don't know, little asphalt plant. If I tell you, think of asphalt immediately. That asphalt, that Maserati, in my report, my summary.
You're over your time, please, sir.
That's the 40 report. It has the EPA, well, it has 40 chemicals. In the document, the 28, they're called TAP. Toxic air. This is document 3. That's 20. It says what TAP asphalt. The problem with this is 2014. I asked DQ, do you have an updated this? Not one that they tell me. So if that plant doesn't kick out as much of these this spring, remember Charlene? In her presentation, she said we have lower emissions. This is called PAT. Toxic air, 28 of them typically come out of asphalt. I'm glad not as many come out of that one. But you want a chemical cocktail that's just not as potent as the old ones they used to feed it? Oh, come on. There's some level of bad stuff in that air. You know, they can measure it. Notice she said they're lower as emissions. She did not say in her presentation there are no toxic emissions coming out of that thing. The Maserati deal, but there's still toxic emissions coming out. She used the term, if you listen to her presentation, lower emissions, right? And she omitted the word toxic. That's what the industry people do. They don't want to remind you, so I encourage us, encourage them, put this voluntarily, withdraw the request, put the plant in a place that you want an industrial park, and everybody can use them as a good model of, but it is the good as citizen part of.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There may be questions.
I'm not gonna ask a question.
The document that we all received just has the list of 5 documents. Were the 5 documents, is that what you just handed up, that was that bound?
Right. Oh, yeah, yes, yes, I gave it to you. That's in the 40-page report. And I'll give you, and I can give you a copy.
Okay, yeah.
Document 3, this is 28.
No, we will, if at best, we will receive it and then decide what weight it should be given. That's different from judicial notice.
That's it.
Even the applicant,
Well, Dan,
I think if it is a document that is prepared by the Department of Environmental Quality, it may be fair to at least take judicial notice of it, but the board is still entitled to give it whatever weight it believes appropriate.
Okay.
I'm trying to make the point that I'm not saying that that plant was created. That's what APQ says. Asphalt plants in general do. If they can prove that they don't met 28, yeah, I did not hear they did not need.
Okay. All right. Okay, is that all for the hearing? If so, I'll close the hearing.
I do think they were gonna make closing
Closing,
statements.
okay. I unclose the hearing. Make your statement.
Members of the committee, I want to thank you, number one, for taking the time to listen to the testimony that's been offered. Again, my name is Stephon Bowens. I represent a number of individuals who have testified. Specifically, today, you've heard from Carlotta Reyes, who lives adjacent to the property. You've heard her testify about the health concerns that she and her family members, as adjacent property owners, actually present at with respect to pre-existing conditions. That is a fact, and those are facts that the board must take into consideration. You've heard testimony from other members of the community testifying about other pre-existing health conditions that they have. Now, you've heard Ms. Reyes talk about specifically issues related to bronchitis, related to respiratory disorders, related to pulmonary sarcoidosis in her father-in-law. All of those are real health concerns. What you've also heard is testimony from a chemical engineer who has looked at the emissions from a typical plant. Now, why did his report only focus on a typical plant? That's because the applicant has not provided the board with more detailed information. Now, in this instance, it's not enough to say with respect to your consideration as it relates to your responsibilities under Section 15 and the issuance of the special use permit that in determining whether public health and safety are impacted by this facility. It's not enough for you to say, well, EPA or North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality is going to look at it from an air perspective and look at it from a water perspective. That's not your charge. Your charge is not to defer to the state of North Carolina. Your charge is to make an independent evaluation. And in this case, you have no information. You have a slideshow. And the slideshow says everything's great, everything's wonderful. But it doesn't say particularly anything about what is going to be done at that plant. It doesn't say anything specific about the type of emissions are expected to come from that plant. It doesn't say anything about the amount of particulates. You've heard a lot of conversation around it, but you haven't heard any facts related to it. And given that, you cannot make the determination that this plant will not have any adverse impact on public health. We've identified the adjacent property owners residential home that is next door to this particular proposed site. There are two on either side. There's one on either side. There are farms in the community immediately adjacent to the property. And in every instance, what you have heard from the residents of the community is that this use is not in harmony. It is not compatible with the area. And that isn't just a zoning decision. While we might believe that there's a problem with the zoning decision and the fact that the property was changed from RA 30 to commercial park, that's an issue for another day. The real question is tonight, whether or not in looking at that use, is there any other heavy industrial use in that area? And the answer is no. This is not creating a commercial park where a number of other industries are going to come to it. This is creating a heavy industrial spot zone facility. And yes, I use that word spot zone because in fact, that's what this was. Now, the board should take that in consideration when looking at harmony, because we've already said there's a church, there are two churches, at least potentially three. There are multiple residents. You've heard testimony from Ms. Reyes that there are at least 150 homes within a 1 mile radius. You've heard other evidence from other residents that there are more homes, at least 2,500 in a 2 mile radius. That is fact. That is evidence. The GIS data shows it, and it is GIS data from Harnett County. That is fact. The question is whether or not this particular use, which is a heavy industrial use, is consistent with the community that it surrounds. In this case, that is a resounding no. It is a no. Location, location, location. No one, you haven't heard anyone say that there shouldn't be an asphalt plant. Not one of the witnesses that I've called tonight said what they have said is not right here because it is an inconsistent use with respect to the location of the proposed site. There's agriculture, there are residences, there are light businesses. You heard there's an auction. Okay, there's an auction. And it is denoted as a commercial park, but it is not required to have a special use permit because it is not an intensive industry. Asphalt plants are regulated for a reason. It is considered heavy industrial under your code for a reason. Now, I can go specifically to the code if you like, and I can rattle them off for you. For example, we know that the factors that you have to consider under Chapter 15, number one is whether or not substantial competent material evidence has been provided. Well, what have some of the objectors provided? They provided the testimony of a chemical engineer who has said there are particular problems with the fugitive gas element that escaped from the facility, and that those emissions and particulates go not only in the air but to the ground and create what? Rain. There's been no refuting by the defendant that the elements that were identified, sulfur dioxide compounds, sulfur dioxide, NOx, and formaldehyde, for example, don't contribute to these noxious particular property, this particular site, and the request for a special use permit is not also not with the surrounding community, under the provisions of the code, not in Harmon. My client, Ms. Reyes, lives at 7206. She's next door. It's a residence. It's an RA30. You can say all you want that you never know what you're going to get next door to you, but it's one thing to say you never know what you're going to get next door to you. It's another thing for the board to put the highest and most intensive use, which is heavy industrial, next to a residential home. In fact, next to 2 residential homes, or in fact, next to 3 ongoing agricultural concerns. And that's what the testimony of Mr. Johnson was. Sean Johnson, your planner, admitted that there are no heavy industrial uses in that area. So how that could be deemed compatible, it certainly wasn't and is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And there was evidence that was presented with respect to page 27 of the comprehensive plan that said no noxious industries will be permitted within those areas. Now, you can look at all of this testimony, all of these things. The applicant is saying we have the best and most important, we have the best technology. Every applicant says we have the best technology. We have newer technology. Great. We're excited about that. That's wonderful. But they have not overcome the issue of being in harmony with the community. They have not overcome the risks associated with public health concerns, particularly, as the record indicates, related to the residential communities and the residential properties that are immediately adjacent to this proposed site. Location, location, location. Not about being not in my backyard. This is not an NIMBY situation. There have been specific, articulable, reasonable, competent, and material facts presented to you this evening, which demonstrate that this special use permit should be denied. The fact that, and just as another fact, the fact that there is another facility within 5 to 6 miles, as testified by the applicant, of the proposed site, in and of itself, militates toward not granting this special use permit. It's not a public necessity. It's not a public need. It is not required. There's been no evidence to refute that asphalt isn't available when needed. There are, in fact, even the gentleman that spoke in support admitted that asphalt is available in other areas. He said that he got asphalt from RDU. He got it from SD Wooten. He got it from Lillington when they were making what he wanted. And when they weren't, he was going another place. Whether he has to drive another 5 miles or 10 miles isn't relevant to the question of whether or not the location of this particular site is appropriate. That's not before you. So don't get confused. Don't get confused about taxes. Whether or not it increases the tax base is not a consideration as it relates to the factors that you have to consider when determining whether or not a special use permit should be granted. This is a specific decision related to this specific location. And nothing that the applicant has submitted to you today, I submit, would lead you to using them. And therefore, we would respectfully submit that this application should be denied. However, in saying that, as an attorney, you will know that sometimes attorneys talk both sides of the coin. And it is my job to say to you that we believe we have submitted sufficient evidence to demonstrate that this special use permit should be denied. We also believe that there's been sufficient evidence that's been provided that if the board were to grant the special use permit, that it should do so by restricting the hours of operation and limiting them to reasonable hours, such as 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., so that the individuals who live most closely to this, the residential units, will not be affected at night. That is a reasonable request, should the board decide to do it, which we believe that the evidence is contrary to the issuance of the facility. Again, we believe that there's sufficient evidence for denial. We would ask the board to deny it, but if it does choose to grant, reasonable restrictions should be placed on this particular facility as it relates to time, place, and manner restrictions, specifically as it relates to the time of operation, given the residential character of the surrounding property.
Mr. Pope.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for your attention, patience, and allowing all parties the opportunity to fully be heard. I will say that I have been all over Central and Eastern North Carolina doing these similar type hearings, and you don't ever know what you're going to get. And this has been a very professionally run, competently run hearing where all parties had the opportunity to say what they had to say and operate it within the rules of the statute. As an attorney, I appreciate that on behalf of the client. I know that my client does, as I'm sure that other parties do as well. Because you don't ever know what you're going to get by way of testimony, it's kind of hard to prepare what your closing argument. It's also difficult for me as an attorney to be brief. But we've been here a long time, so I'm going to do my best to be brief. And I'm going to do my best to try not to regurgitate all of the testimony, because I've watched you, you've asked thoughtful questions of all the witnesses, and I can see that you were listening. I can tell that you can understand what you can consider and what you can't, or what you shouldn't. But I do want to spend a little bit of time on that, then we'll turn to what's set out in code that is under consideration.
They want to use the mic.
Yep, sorry. Your decision must be based on competent material and substantial evidence, based on the criteria that is set forth in your code. It's helpful to understand those are buzzwords, those are legal words, those have been interpreted by our court. Those have been particular portions of them set out in statute, particularly what is not competent, which I think will be important in your consideration. Material evidence is evidence that has some logical connection with the facts and consequences of the issue. Fairly self-explanatory. Substantial evidence is relevant, another buzzword, evidence as a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. Fairly self-evident. It must do more than create suspicion of the existence of the fact to be established. But here is what may be the most important component of those three things, is competent evidence. Competent evidence is testimony that supports the appropriate fact to be established. here is what is not competent evidence. North Carolina General Statute 160D 1402 specifically sets forth certain opinions of lay witnesses that is not competent testimony that you are not to consider to make your decision. Number one, that the use of the property in a particular way affects the value of other property. There's a lot of that. That is not competent evidence. There has been no appraiser or other professional tendered as an expert property valuation to provide any testimony to you that the proposed use of my client will negatively impact the value of surrounding property. The only evidence that has been provided is by lay witnesses, specifically by statute, that is not competent and should not be considered. The second, which is not competent evidence, is the increase in vehicular traffic resulting from a proposed development poses a danger to public safety. We've heard quite a bit of lay testimony about traffic. We've not heard any expert testimony regarding traffic from anybody that's opposed to it. No engineer, no traffic engineer, no civil engineer, or any other person that has been qualified as an expert to provide testimony on that. So that is not competent evidence. It does not be considered. And this is a big one. Matters about which only expert testimony would generally be admissible under the rules of evidence. So you've heard a lot of testimony from lay witnesses about toxic. Heard a lot of testimony from lay witnesses about alleged health impact. You've not heard any expert testimony on any of those issues coming from opponents. So all of that testimony about what people think, what about people read on the internet, is also inadmissible and competent evidence, is not to be considered or should not be considered. You can consider what you want, I understand. But our statute says that it is not competent evidence, and therefore you should not consider it. So that leaves you with very little that was presented by way of opposition to this application that is competent, material, and substantial. We'll turn to that. You have two people that you qualified as experts. We'll talk about what they were qualified in and what they were qualified to give testimony to. But I think it would be helpful to turn now to the criteria. I think 3 out of the 5 are completely uncontroverted evidence. So one of your 5 criteria is that adequate utilities, access, street, drainage, sanitation, and other necessary facilities have been or are being provided. Scott Brown was qualified as an expert in civil engineering. He provided substantial competent material evidence that all of these criteria were met. There was no testimony from anybody, even lay witness, in opposition that criteria was not. So we would contend to you that applicant has provided prima facie evidence that criteria isn't and is not opposed. Second criteria, these are not in the same order as in your code, is adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress, though designed to minimize traffic congestion to the public streets. Scott Brown is the only person qualified as an expert to be able to provide testimony to that, which he did, that the site plan is designed to minimize traffic impact, that the site plan design is in compliance with the current criteria set forth by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, who will ultimately be able to decide that on their own and whether to grant or not grant a driveway permit on Highway 210. No testimony from the opposition, not even lay witnesses, on that criteria. So we would contend to you that applicant has made prima facie case that criteria has been met and is uncontroverted. Third criteria, which I think is actually number 5 in your code, is that the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except that such regulation may in each instance be modified by the Board of Adjustment. As a part of Mr. Brown's testimony, I asked him a series of questions regarding the Angier Code and the regulations for this district. And his testimony was that the buffers, the screening, and all the other site plan. There has been no competent or even lay person testimony to the contrary that there are any other regulations in the Angier Town Code which the proposed site development does not provide for. Therefore, we would contend that that condition has been met, or prima facie evidence has been provided of that by the applicant. So this really comes down to the last two criteria, right? Or that's would be our contention, and that is what the opponents spent most of their time attempting to provide competent and material and substantial evidence with respect to. So that would be, next criteria is the requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the surrounding or adjoining district. Again, still has to be competent material and substantial evidence. And most of what you heard as that would be something that you can consider not incompetent evidence is not in my backyard. Okay? I understand. I don't fault anybody for getting up here and saying that piece. I think it's wonderful that you have so many people that are willing to participate in the process. But that does not provide competent evidence as to here is why this would impair the character of the surrounding and adjoining district. We had your planner, reason I asked the question, found the right document. I believe this was exhibit number 1 that showed the adjoining zoning district up here, exhibit 1, the zoning compatibility. This is not a zoning case. Zoning decision has been made, which is a legislative function made by your town council. This is a quasi-judicial function, as you well know, and as you have followed very well this evening. But what this shows is that the majority of all the land all around it is zoned the same way. You know, the argument that's being made is there's currently no heavy industrial use, yet it's a permitted use in this district, and all this other property is zoned the same way. You know, the opponent on exhibit, I believe, was A, contends that, and I don't have any reason to dispute it, that this information came off of the Harnett County GIS, and that all the little yellow dots represent houses. Well, this site is right here, and it's all green, it's all undeveloped. All the houses are way out here. You know, if this is not a spot in Angier for you to be able to have heavy industrial, where's it going to be? This is not in the middle of a heavily residential area. There are a couple of houses out there. I don't think anybody disputes that. But all these developments aren't even in eyesight, at least not when I drove down 210. So the applicant provided testimony from mechanical engineer and environmental compliance qualified as an expert that provided, this is competent testimony, provided competent testimony regarding the operation of this plant that would be proposed located on this property. And that it doesn't cause environmental, doesn't cause groundwater issues. It doesn't cause air pollution. All that, there's been no competent testimony contrary to that testimony that was presented by the applicant. Now, we've got one witness that was a chemical engineer. We talked about that a little bit. But we didn't have no environmental scientist, no environmental engineer, nobody qualified to provide competent testimony contrary to the testimony that was provided on behalf of the applicant. And therefore, we believe that that criteria has been satisfied, that it will not impair the character of the surrounding and adjoining district. Notice it doesn't say the surrounding or adjoining one property right next to it. It says the surrounding and adjoining district. It says all this green space right up in here, not yellow dots for house. then I think where the opponents spent most of their time was the last criteria, which is that the requested use will not be detrimental to health, morals, or welfare. Okay? One thing that we clearly did not have here tonight is testimony of any expert that's qualified to give help. My knowledge, I didn't see a doctor. I think the last gentleman was a doctor, psychologist, who was not a doctor, was not qualified. An expert to provide opinion testimony that the operation of this asphalt plant at this particular location simply helped this employees, not property owners, not anything else. To the contrary, Ms. Coate provided testimony that Department of Environmental Quality, even if you approve this special use permit, if when they conduct their test, if they believe that it will increase air pollution, that it causes a danger to anybody else, they won't give a permit. So you could grant this special use permit and this asphalt plant still might not get built if that would be the case. Now, if we believe that was gonna happen, we wouldn't be up here having spent the last 10 hours having this conversation. Because we're confident that the plant works well within the parameters as established by the Department of Environmental Quality. What you have received in from the opponent is not competent, substantial evidence, is you gotta pull stuff off the internet. I can go on the internet and find anything I want it, right? I don't care if you're citing the EPA, or the Department of Environmental Quality, OSHA, or anybody else. People that provided those are not qualified experts and competent to give that testimony. They can print out reports and hand it to you. We're not here to know what the report said. We're not here to cross-examine the people that may have. I think there was one where it was something Palestine. That's not competent evidence. None of those things properly before this board and shouldn't be considered by. We didn't hear any testimony, my recollection, that this was an immoral activity, right? Not a strip club or juke joint or whatever else somebody might think might be immoral. So I don't think that that is before us. And welfare, I suppose that you classify welfare as a pretty broad term. That's what you, this board, thinks that, I think it's kind of akin to the character of the surrounding district, really, how I would interpret that. And again, we've only received, I would contend the lay testimony of not provided the factual testimony, because all the factual, what portrayed as factual testimony is stuff that they were reading out that got off the internet or wherever else they found their information. So I want to just touch very briefly on the two witnesses, rather, that the opponent qualified as experts, what they were qualified as experts. The one gentleman that was qualified as a builder-developer, I think is how it was stated, was very limited in what he could provide opinion testimony, and essentially I think it was is I wouldn't build a subdivision next to an asphalt. And then he said he had a subdivision next to a nuclear power plant and that it was on fire, i.e. it's selling, houses are selling, not that it's on fire like it's bad. That it was rough for a little while, and now that it's on fire. So, I don't think it's even relevant whether somebody would or wouldn't put a subdivision next to an asphalt plant as whether or not any of your criteria are met. But even to the extent that you think it is, asphalt plant, nuclear power plant. I don't see how you could, I would think one would be worse than the other. I'll leave that up to you. And then we had the gentleman, Mr. Horry, who was testified as qualified as a chemical engineer. He's not qualified as an environmental scientist or an environmental engineer. He was qualified as a chemical engineer. He has the criteria to be qualified as an expert in it. And I think he can testify as to the chemicals that go in the Roundup to kill weeds. I think that engineering, and he may still be working in that field, I can't recall. But when you look at his report, he just went and took stuff off the internet. EPA, OSHA, whatever he has attributed into here, when I walked through it with him, he just took broad statement. Yes, are there emissions of certain things from asphalt plants? I'm sure that came from the Department of Environmental Quality, same people that issue the permit. They know these things, and it comes back to is how much of these does it do, does it emit, and is it an air quality issue? And if it is, you don't get a permit. We didn't include any of that in here, right? He just said, oh, well, there's all these chemicals. And he couldn't even explain the opinions that he was attempting to give that he really wasn't qualified. Right? He's qualified to talk about chemicals, and that's okay. But then he goes on to further try in this report, which is not competent, should be considered, about health impact. He wasn't qualified as an expert to testify as to that, and doesn't provide any supporting information as to why, this is going to create acid rain and all these different things, and why those are helpful. So you only had two expert witnesses in opposition that were qualified in very limited capacity, who at least one of those probably testified beyond his expert capability. It's up to my contention that none of those things should really be. Now, I told you I was going to be brief, and I probably already run on too long. So I'm going to wrap it up, okay? So your quasi-judicial function, the Board of Adjustment, is to consider 5 criteria that I've just discussed. You're only to consider, all says you should only consider competent, material, and my contention that applicant, through our testimony, which includes the application, which was part of, came in with the planner, staff report, is that we have made a prima facie showing that all of those criteria have been met with evidence of testimony that we have presented, and that the opponent, those that are opposed, have failed to present competent, material, substantial evidence upon which you find any one of the criteria. Especially use of debt. I will just say, I'm not sure if this closing argument would be the appropriate place to do it or to not do it. With respect to the hours of operation, stand the request for the opponents. I'll live next to it. What I would say to you is that I think the question was asked, trainers, for this testimony, not providing testimony, is if you are operating an asphalt plant, you don't know when asphalt is going to be needed. I think the particular example that was given is Andrew has a water line break at 1 o'clock in the morning. You need asphalt at 1 o'clock in the morning. It can't wait till 8 o'clock next. If DOT wants to repay 210 and they want to do it at night, so your streets aren't clogged up, the kids are trying to get to school on Wednesday morning, and they say we need the asphalt at 11 o'clock at night, that's what the DOT wants asphalt. So I understand the request that of this board, that if you are inclined to grant a special use permit, that you put operational hour restrictions on there, but as a practical matter, that would make it infeasible for my client to operate this business or pursue this opportunity. Because they just don't know when asphalt. And again, I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your time. I'll close that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, can I close the hearing? All right. Reclose the unclosed hearing. Okay. We now have. I had it well, but. So we now have discussion among the board members.
Sure. So, before you discuss, I'll just remind the board that this is, a special use permit hearing. The issue before the board is whether the applicant has presented competent evidence that these 5 criteria are met. The 5 criteria being the ones that have been discussed in the closing statements. It's up to the board if you want to discuss now. I understand it is 1:40. If you want to reconvene and have the discussion at another time, we could do that. If you want to discuss it now, that's perfectly fine too.
What's the feeling of the board?
I would prefer to go ahead and vote on this
I say
matter.
we get it done.
Okay.
That we've been dealing with this. We need to make a decision so
Junior?
everybody is
You okay?
comfortable and we can put this
To rest.
to rest.
All right. I concur. What discussion is there among the board members?
Well, I just want to say, because I don't want you to think we have no discussion on this matter whatsoever. It's been discussed. And I just want to let you know, along with that, I think all these other people here have heard you.
Yes.
And thank you for coming out and speaking and doing it civilly, without
Right.
violence and that,
Amen.
because there's enough of that going on in our country. But if you want something done, you have to be heard. I just want to thank you and just acknowledge the fact that we have heard you. And if we're not going to sit here now and ask 15 more questions amongst ourselves, I think we heard you. That's, I think, the best thing I can say.
And
And
thank
I'd
you so
like-
much for getting involved.
I'd like to say, repeating what Mr. Commissioner Coates said, we've had, as y'all well know, we've had numerous emails, and we have replied through our attorney, statement that he gave us. But we have heard you, and we haven't ignored them. So we've heard you all.
So how do you want to proceed? Dan, should we make findings in each case?
Yes,
No
so
matter
what
how
we'll have
each
to
finding
do,
comes out?
whatever findings the board makes, first of all, must be based solely on the evidence presented at the hearing tonight, the testimony, the exhibits that were presented tonight. Those decisions that you make about each criteria will need to be reduced to writing. So if y'all want to go through one at a time, the 5 criteria and discuss whether you believe that criteria is met, I think that would be appropriate. And then following that decision, we can have it reduced to writing and sent to the parties.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question, Dan? Because in my experience, from we sometimes when we break these things down, 1 through 5, then there's confusion over what were you in favor of it, were you not in favor of it? How many did it take in each category to outweigh the number that it needed to make to decide it? If I'm making anything clear to you in what I'm saying, I'm confused. I'm not confused. I just want to clarify, because we've done this many times where we sit here and break this down, and then we think we voted for it or against it, and when you pull it all together, we haven't done what we planned on doing.
Okay, to clarify, what the board needs to do, if you're going to grant the special use permit, you need to find that all 5 criteria are met.
Okay.
If you're going to deny the special use permit, you need to find that at least one of the criteria is not met. So you can discuss them as a whole, you can discuss them one by one, but the requirement to grant is that all of them are met. The requirement to deny is that one of them is not met.
And I don't know that that fits here, but if one is questionable, you could, if it's possible to fix it with a conditional.
Correct.
A condition, you can do that also.
That is correct. And that would be the only way you could put a condition on there, is that if you feel like one of these criteria is not met without a condition, but would be met with a reasonable condition, you can impose that reasonable condition so that the criteria is met.
And the map, the things on the map the turn lanes and the hours of operation, if any restriction, those would have to be conditions, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. You want to start with A?
Yep.
Okay. The requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the surrounding or adjoining districts. Do you agree to that or not agree to that? All those in favor of making that finding as written, please raise your hand.
It is confusing.
Do you believe, I guess the question is, do you believe that the requested use will or will not impair the integrity or character of the surrounding or adjoining district?
Well,
Right, well, I was reading
if
it
you
both
vote
ways
against
so that
it,
you
you're
can-
not making the finding, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You would, you could find either way. Find that it will or will not.
If you vote favorably, you will find that it does not impair the integrity or character of the surrounding or adjoining districts. If you vote against it, then you are finding that it will impair. Okay?
I think that clarifies.
Yep.
All right.
Good question.
Okay. So, all those in favor of finding positively the initial finding that it will not impair the integrity or character of the surrounding or adjoining districts, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, I guess that answers the question.
So is that a finding that condition A is not met, right?
Is that the understanding of the board, just to
Yes.
confirm?
Yes.
Which would then mean that the permit would be denied.
Right.
Yep.
Is that the wish of the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Do we want to discuss any of the other, are there any others that you also believe are not met?
I personally don't think B has been met. It says requested use will not be detrimental to the health or morals or welfare. I don't think there's no evidence that's been here tonight saying that it will not be detrimental to certain people that live in these communities. So there's nothing that's been presented to us to support that.
Okay.
And to
So-
clarify, it is the burden of the applicant to
Exactly.
present evidence to meet that criteria.
So if you agree, you agree that it won't be detrimental to the health, morals, and welfare, you would vote for it. If you agree that it will be detrimental to the health, morals, and welfare, you vote against it.
Right.
So all in favor of B, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Okay. All right. I think probably C and D and E are easier.
Yeah.
Can we vote on those three together?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you agree with C, D, and E, please raise your hand.
They are being met.
They are being met.
They are being met, okay. All right. Okay, the special use permit is denied.
Hate to run, but if I don't go pee right now, I'm always peeing on you.
I gotta be up at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, are you adjourning us? Sorry, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
If you're in favor of being adjourned, just use your feet.